Well, welcome everyone. Sorry for the technical glitches we're having here this morning or this afternoon. But welcome to the MNP session, the working session here. So hopefully everyone can see the slide in front of you where we're talking about the first step to creating your recovery plan. MNP has been very active in the private enterprise market, and we've developed this placemat here to sort of walk you through some of the things at MNP that we offer and how we've been working with clients, certainly through the last 8-9 months of the COVID type pandemic that we've been dealing with. So of the first one, the government programs have been around now. The government acted very quickly, I would say, in getting the government programs available. There's many programs, and in the early days, I think a lot of people were uncertain how these were all going to work and what was going to be available. But like I say, I'd say the government has been very active in bringing programs to market for clients and consumers, and really trying to keep things moving forward for businesses across Canada. At MNP, we dedicated a team of a number of people that really, because these programs were very complex, and the devil was in the detail, I would say, with these programs. And so what we did was we gathered a team across the country to really go through and dive into this. And then what we did was we put a program on our website called the COVID Business Center that is available to anybody on mnp.ca. And we posted all these sort of programs, what was available, how they worked, who was eligible, and sort of the hoops you had to jump through to really be, to get up and running and have them available, and try and get some of these programs and help businesses through the pandemic. So it was a lot of work, but I think at the end of the day, the government's done a great job in putting these together for businesses, and it's really helped keep our economy going. So, if you have any further questions about that, what's still available, and go into mnp.ca and go into our business advice center, and it works very well. So on the business resilience, Yohaan, is that something that you're going to be talking to?
No, that's gonna be me. Sorry. Hi everybody. So my name is still Racco. Apologies. Some people are having issues signing on. Some people are having issues as far as their video not working. So again, I'll be covering off some of the business resilience pieces here. So just as a little bit of a background for myself, when I went through schooling, my formal schooling was in disaster and emergency management. So everything that's kind of happened in the last year, 2020 being what it is, has really kind of been an interesting time for people in my profession. So one of the things, MNP has had this practice for a while, and we've been working with our clients for quite a bit of time. The practice has been in operation basically for 11 years. And what we were set out and tried to help organizations to do is really build up that resilience, and really thinking about how we can be proactive in our approach to make sure that we understand what some of our exposures are, but then also help to develop some strategies that if we do run into certain situations, we'd be able to have a plan, right? The plan is nothing, but planning is everything. Going through, thinking about these things, understanding what we are. What I wanted to, I guess, share with everybody today is some of the things that we're noticing here, as well as some of the changing complexities that have really kind of come up with this. So since things have happened, what I can say from my view and from my from my industry, when we start thinking about continuity of operations planning or disaster recovery, I honestly think that there's been a massive shift in the way that we have to do things. We've always been thinking about, pre-COVID, we were always kind of thinking about one-off events or things that were a little bit more manageable, whereas this is a whole of country, response, a whole of government response, a whole of world response to something. We've in the past had the opportunity, or we've been lucky as far as there's been localized issues that individuals or groups have had to deal with, whereas this is kind of a massive shift. So I'm noticing even in myself, in my profession, that there's a little bit of a change with this. One of the things that I wanted to share as far as what we've learned, and something that I'm sharing with my clients, and I'd like to share with you for you to consider in your own life and with your own operations, is really to to take advantage of kind of three things, if I can distill it down to that. So the first thing that I'm noticing, and I'm noticing this in speaking on the private enterprise side, but as well as dealing with government, as well as those in the public sector, is, we're hearing some pretty solid news when it comes to vaccines, these things coming out that are hopefully going to help us with this. But the unfortunate truth is we're going to be dealing with this well into 2021, right? That is just going to be what the reality is. So, people are thinking we're kind of at the fourth quarter here, maybe at the 2-minute warning. Unfortunately, we're kind of maybe only at halftime. So with that being said, and not to bring down the mood, but with that being said, one of the things that I'm really encouraging my clients to do is to actually take a pause. In many parts of Canada, we're in the second wave of this. Do we have an opportunity to take a pause and look at how we did with certain things? What do we need to keep doing, start doing, stop doing? And I would, recommend to people to kind of take that opportunity, because people have been running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. What have we had the opportunity to do? And as Shane just kind of alluded there have been a lot of things that, with the flood of information, has been drinking out of a fire hose, right? So do we have the opportunity to kind of pause now, see what things are available to us, see what opportunities do arise, and maybe things that we can think about to kind of figure out, because we have to respond, but now can we do a bit of a retrospective to understand how we could potentially do better. The second thing, if you haven't already done so, that I'm encouraging my clients to do, again, we're in the midst of a second wave. There is a very high likelihood that we're going to go through a third wave, and there will be different aspects of that. I know that I live in Ontario. I live in Peel, which is one of the hot zones in the province. They're talking about more localized shutdowns. So, the response that we all had in March and April is not necessarily going to be the response that we're going to have in November, December, January. So continue to do that planning, continue to think, and that's where that retrospective that I was kind of mentioning a little bit earlier, I think is really kind of key. If we have that opportunity to think and look back at what we did versus, what we need to do in the future, the context has changed, the environment has changed. So what do we necessarily need to do? We can't just necessarily take our playbook from March and apply it to November or December. So thinking about that would be kind of the second thing that I'm really encouraging people to do. So the first one, take a pause to do a bit of a retrospective. Number two, try and plan for some of these additional waves that are going to be coming. And then the third one, and this is going to be where I want to segue over to Yohaan, because I think this is an opportunity that this situation is really presenting to everybody. But how, in the longer term, what is it that we are learning from this time to be able to think about how we can become more resilient in the future? So again, just some lessons that we've heard. Supply chain issues pretty early on, right? So what do we necessarily need to do? A lot of people are doing the whole nearshoring concept. What do we necessarily need to do to take the lessons from what we're going through and then apply those to make ourselves more resilient in the longer term, to make our to build our business not back up but back better. Is one of the interesting things. So the thing that I just wanted to share with everybody are really those three things. If you have the opportunity, please take a second, celebrate some of the victories that you have and recognize what some of the improvement opportunities are. Make sure that you think about what your plans are going to be for the next 2 or 3 waves, because I think that's been a huge lesson that we've learned from people, because again, we're only at halftime with this. And then the third one is, what can we do to think about the longer term? Which is, again, I want to kick it over to Yohaan, because he can give us some insights onto that. Yohaan?
Oops. Thanks, Phil.
No problem.
I think we're on to Shane.
Yep. So I'm going to. So my name is Shane King. I'm a partner with MNP out of the Lower Mainland region, and so I head up our succession practice on a national scale. So I'm going to talk about sort of some wealth planning and succession. So what we're finding today is that a lot of business owners have built their business up from the ground, working on it if you look at the business life cycle, and then started the business potentially out of their garage 30, 40 years ago, and really spent a lot of time on the ground building up the business to where it is today and having a substantial operation. Maybe it's a large manufacturing company, construction company, a retail organization. And what we find is a lot of these businesses now forms the value of the business forms a large component of business owners' overall wealth. And how do they now extract that wealth out of that business so ultimately they can retire? So wealth planning is the key thing that business owners need to look at. And along with that, looking at all the other assets that they have. So when we start talking to people about next stages of life, one of the first things that they want, we have a discussion with them is, what is the assets that they have that they can pull upon to ultimately go through to retirement? A lot of business owners don't have a pension plan. Their pension plan is really that asset that they've built up there in the business, and that's how they plan on extracting that value out of it. So maximizing the value in some sort of transition is a key thing that we talk to clients about, is that you want to get the most you can out of that business to ultimately have the biggest nest egg to live the rest of your life at the level that you want. When we start talking to these clients, is that what we find is that the value of their business that they think it is worth is usually one very high or very low relative to what the reality is. So what we'll look at is what sort of, from a future planning point of view, is what does a client need in the future to live the life that they want, but also where are they at today? So when you look at sort of the value of the business, a lot of times we'll start with a business valuation to determine where the business is at. If we don't have enough value in the business today, we can start looking at some of the other options. And one of them is what Yohaan will be talking about in a little bit, is performance management. Is there ways to enhance the value of the business so that when the client wants to retire in, say, 5 years, that they ultimately can hit that mark that they really need from an overall wealth value in the business? So the big thing is that these clients, is working with them is a key thing. You have to have a close relationship with a very having your team, your accountant, your investment advisor, your insurance people, having a strong team around you is a key thing that we always talk to clients. And if you don't have that team, I would strongly suggest business owners to get that team in place as early as possible, because all those advisors need to be working very closely together to help that client get to the end game. When we talk about succession planning, a lot of times people think of it as probably as an event, as I need to go and talk to someone, put a succession plan in, put an estate freeze in, and that is my succession plan. Succession planning is way beyond just going and doing a tax reorganization. We spend a substantial amount of time speaking with the key stakeholders in an overall business. It's not just mom and dad. A lot of times I think that people think that the key stakeholders are just mom and dad. And when we dive into a business, we now start talking with mom, dad, obviously the kids that may or may not work in the business, along with some other key stakeholders, maybe the CFO, the CEO, your VP of finance. All these different people in an organization are key people that we need to talk to understand what the family wants to do with the business, what's the timeline that they're looking at, what is the secret sauce of the business. When mom and dad started that business many, many years ago, it was at ground zero, and they built that business up over many years and had many days, sleepless nights, putting money in personally and stuff. When you go and transfer that business to a next generation, a lot of times they think it's a very easy transition to transfer that business to the next gen. The problem is next gen is got a turnkey business, but they haven't gone to the school of hard knocks like mom and dad did. And so we need to spend the time with the family to teach them how to run this business. We'll sometimes take kids and send them off to getting them involved in an EO group or a McKay CO forum to help get them a network around them to help build the confidence that they need to run the business. Sometimes it's business courses that they need to take. So all these things are key things as part of that succession plan, and having, like I say, the key team around them to make sure that they do the right things. When you talk about succession plan, the key thing I would say as well is that you need to start early. When someone comes to us and says, "Oh, I want to sell my business next year," a lot of times we find that business may not be ready. And when it's not ready, a lot of times people will leave value on the table if they don't do the proper steps. So start the process early is a key thing to take advantage of some of the tax planning that is available. And you know, that like I say, that's probably a key thing. Engaging advisors around you, getting your team around you, your tax advisor, your succession planning, your investment advisor, your insurance people. These are all key people that you need to have, you know, and be ready at all times. So be ready for the knock on the door. If you aren't planning, then you're planning to fail. So Yohaan, I'll take it over to you on performance management, because a lot of times when we start talking with clients is that the business is just not at that level where they think it is. And so Yohaan, if you can maybe talk about some of the performance management improvement things that you do with for our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, and thank you all for attending this. I want to talk to three different types of business owners here today on the line. I guess the first type of business owner, and I have a few clients in this pod. You're actually seeing your revenues grow in the short term. Maybe you are supplying a product into the food, grocery, retail, supply chain, and things are up there. Maybe you're in an industry right now booming. And for my clients in those industries, what they're really struggling with is they've got to find about 20 or 30% more capacity in their business. They're probably having their best months ever, and I have a few clients doing that. And one of the things that I'm seeing some of my incredibly long-term plan clients do is they are uncertain about investing in further capital expenditure in their business. So they know they're probably going to grow by 10 to 15 or 20 or 30%, but they are wary of spending any more cash in their business because they don't know what the next few years are going to look like, and how the pandemic is going to move, when the vaccine is going to come out, and various other things. So one of the things that they're actually doing is they're utilizing productivity improvement in their business to find 20 and 30% improvement in capacity. And if you do that, all the extra profit goes straight to the bottom line. Your gross margin essentially becomes your net margin. Maybe something that you want to consider if you're in that bucket. Now, if you are like a lot of other businesses in the other bucket, which is you're really struggling at this point, your revenue has been hit by 20 or 30 or maybe even 50%. One of the things that you have to be looking at this stage is how do I build some resiliency in my business to let this time pass as well. And one of the things that you can start to do from a very practical standpoint, things that I've seen some of our clients do, think about lowering your break-even point, readjust your cost base, go into your business, take a look at the costs that you can start to get rid of. For example, I have clients that have real estate, maybe they're in manufacturing or food businesses, and they are sectioning off parts of their plants, consolidating, and leasing other space to warehousing companies and distribution companies that seem to be booming right now. Clients that have a lot of labor, and labor is a big cost to their business. If you're a service-based business, for example, and or a product-based business that just happens to use a lot of labor, there's still some very interesting programs in play, specifically the work sharing program that allows you to turn your wage cost into somewhat variable and reduce your wage cost by up to 60%. Again, that's in play, and it's a long-time program. It's been around for a long time. I've helped a few companies get on that, and again, it's just helping them get through this reduction in demand for their services or products. The last bucket is we're hearing that there is going to be some financial liquidity issues. The banks are definitely looking at tightening things up. Maybe your bank was lending you 4 to 5 times on your EBITDA. They're now going to start looking at scaling that back to 2 to 3 times your EBITDA. So you have to figure out how to use cash more intelligently in your business. Some things that I'm seeing our clients doing is great time to start looking at some sort of a SKU rationalization in your business. Start to eliminate the SKUs and the services in your business that hold on to cash or take a long time to convert to cash. So since you're an advertising agency, I'm just making this example up. If you're an advertising agency and you have a digital service line and a regular print service line, and the digital converts crash twice or three times as faster than the print, well, start thinking about making long-term investments in digital to promote digital, not just from a strategic point of view, but also from a cash flow point of view. So pragmatic tips that I'll share with you, host of other insights that we'd be happy to sit down with you and share with you, but definitely a very trying time for business right now. And I'll leave you with this too shall pass. And when it does, I think that Canadian businesses will come out of this and be much stronger.
Thanks, Yohaan. From a succession point of view, we work very closely with our corp finance team. And for people that don't know really what a corp finance team, I think the easiest way I would sort of describe a corp finance team is it's someone that you would engage for a couple things. One of the most common one I would say is that when you get to that stage where you've gone through a proper succession plan and then ultimately said, okay, we are going to put this business up for sale, a corp finance team is engaged to really assist you through that process of ultimately taking your business to market. And the process of from the day that you sort of decide to take put the business for sale to the date that you get the check is a common question, like how long does this process take? And surprisingly, I would say on the quickest side, I would ever say is 6 months is probably on the quick end, and more on the norm would probably be 10 to 12 months. And I've seen some transactions take longer that are very complex type transaction. I've seen them take 14 to even 16 months to ultimately get the business closed. But a corp finance team works very closely with the client to guide them through the process and ultimately prepare the business and bring it to market to ultimately try and get the most people in front of your business, just like a real estate agent would for trying to sell your house. The corp finance team, their job is to ultimately get the highest value and find the right purchaser for your business. And when I say that is some businesses don't always sell 100% of their business. So if you're looking to sell a piece of your business, maybe it's 20, 50, 80% of your business, is that ultimately you are now looking for a new partner. So when you bring in a new partner into your business, you want to make sure that is the right partner that you're ultimately going to carry on to in the future, that they're the right fit, that they think like you, and they're going to do the right things for your business. So it's a very key process, especially if you are going to retain part of that business off into the future, is picking the right partner to work with on a go-forward basis. A lot of times as well, clients will say, well, I really want to make sure we do the right things for my employees. This was my baby. I built this business up from ground zero, and I want to make sure that my employees still have a job in the future. So the corp finance teams will work with the vendor and the buyer to make sure that key priority for the business owner is met, and that ultimately they are going to manage that business on a go-forward basis the same way that you did. The other thing that a corp finance team can help is with any debt restructuring. If sometimes clients are looking to get more substantial loans into their business because they want to expand their business out, corp finance people can help you with going and getting more debt for the business, to expand the business, buy another business, whatever it is. They can also help you with any due diligence. If you're looking to acquire another business, a corp finance team can help go through that due diligence process. If you've never bought another business, again, it's strongly, just like on the sell side, we advise clients to make sure you have a proper team around you when you're going to do on the buy side as well. So our corp finance teams can help you with any of that sort of planning and looking at a business that you want to acquire, making sure that substantiating the earnings is one thing that they can do as well. Making sure quality of earnings reports is a thing that they often look at to make sure that the business is really worth what they're trying to get for it. So a very key part of the team, like I say, when ultimately you get to that stage when most of the time, like I say, when you're actually going to be selling the business. Tax, I love taxation. Taxation is one of those things that it's your other shareholder in business that a lot of times we try to ignore, but the reality is we all know that tax is a big part and a thing that we always have to consider in anything that we're doing in business, and obviously when we're selling. So we do a lot of tax planning for clients when they get to that stage when they're going to be selling it. But a key thing around tax planning is, again, it's something that should not be left to the end of the planning process. It should start many years beforehand, that ultimately someone wants to transition a business, whether that's to next gen employees or ultimately a third party sale. There's a lot of planning needs to be done. Some of the plans that are out there is that ultimately the vendor that it's ultimately going to sell the business has to be held more than 2 years before the transaction or the business is sold to another party, in order to take advantage of some of the like lifetime capital gains exemption, for example. Whoever the vendor is has to own those shares for more than 2 years. So we do a lot of restructuring well in advance of any sort of planning. I will say that my personal opinion, I would say, is that we're fairly concerned about some of with the amount of debt. The government is going to have to, at some point in time, turn their focus to start repaying that debt. I think we're still a ways off from that at this point in time, because we're now well into the second wave of the pandemic. But the capital gains inclusion rate is certainly something that's on our radars, that we think the capital gains inclusion rate is going to increase. Right now, it's 50% of all capital gains. The inclusion rate is 50% of that. So you pay tax on basically 50% of the amount of the capital gain you realize. We feel fairly strongly that capital gains inclusion rate will be going up to at least 75% when the next budget does happen, but we don't know at this point in time. We're just speculating that. But from a planning point of view, there's lots of opportunities around tax planning at this point in time, that we're working with our clients to ultimately trying to minimize tax. Sometimes with certain clients, it's making sense to prepay tax today in order to save tax in the future. Maybe they're not at that stage where they ultimately want to sell their business in the next couple of years, but they've got substantial gains in the business, in the real estate, in the goodwill, everything in the business. So we're doing some planning with clients right now around trying to minimize the tax bill in the future. So somewhat crystallizing the value at this point in time, using those capital gains rates at, say, the 50%, as opposed to what they may be in the springtime at, say, 75. So a key thing as well, like I say, is to do tax planning early and don't leave it to the end of the day. So, Yohaan, I think it's over to you for corporate restructuring.
Thanks, Shane. We'll be very quick here. I mean, that's keeping you from the next event, but we find that a lot of businesses here. And when I first talked about things, I was talking about it from a P&L standpoint, a profit and loss statement. A lot of our clients going in through this pandemic just may have too much debt on their balance sheet, which they're unable to service. I talked about companies that have been really impacted negatively, unfortunately, from a revenue standpoint because of this pandemic. I was in one of our clients' companies, and their revenues were down about 50%, and they don't have a very capitalized business, so it was very easy for them to actually hunker down, to reset their business, to actually make money at half the revenue levels, and they're fine. I have another client, unfortunately, that invested in high tech. They have state-of-the-art equipment in their business, an industry leader. And for them, they were also down about 30 to 40%, and that was incredibly difficult to survive. And this is where corporate restructuring and recovery comes into place, because we do have people, and there are people in the marketplace that are available to you that can chat with your creditors with respect to restructuring your debt. And this gives you an opportunity to get ahead of things. And as long as you're in control of the process, and the way you do that is you get ahead of it before your creditors come knocking. After that, you lose control, and they obviously take control of their process, and they can bring in people to actually run a restructuring process. And many a times it's done to their best interest. So one of the things that I would say to you is that if you're interested and you're looking at your balance sheet and you're not sure, you've debt on it that may be a little bit more expensive to service, you just want to talk to someone and say, hey, how do I have problems here with my balance sheet? Here's how much cash I burned through the pandemic. What do I need to do? And you're just looking for another opinion, someone at our firm would be glad to talk with you. We have a lot of trustees in bankruptcy and restructuring and recovery that work for our firm. And the end goal isn't always necessarily bankruptcy. I mean, sometimes you're basically going to your creditors and you're making a proposal to them, or you're restructuring debt. Bankruptcy obviously is a terrible word, and it's right at the end of the process. And one of the things that I'm seeing here is that a lot of firms and a lot of companies took a lot of these government grants up front. They have a lot of cash sitting in their bank accounts, but they haven't necessarily taken a look at their balance sheet and figured out that they need to restructure them. And so think about those conversations. If you're CFO of a business, look at the balance sheet, get some outside perspective to take a look at it. Go and have conversations with your financial lenders. They all know what's going on. And I have noticed, especially with my clients, that there is a hesitation to engage in those conversations early. And that's not a bad thing. In fact, that's a good thing. Go in and start to have those conversations early. And with that, I hand it back over to Shane.
Thanks, Yohaan. And I would love to hear from you on one of the examples where you on your performance management, maybe you give a quick example of one of the clients you have worked with where you've gone in there and really increased the EBITDA a lot of times is the key thing. So just maybe give a couple examples of some of the clients you have worked with on some performance management, how you work with them and how you've been able to build up ultimately a stronger EBITDA.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll give you an example. Well, I just finished talking about some negative stuff with corporate restructuring, so I'll give you a positive example. We had a client that was a food distributor and supplying into the grocery supply chain. They have had their best last 2 quarters in business. And one of the challenges is that their business grew about 40%. And the bank wasn't necessarily willing to lend them more money to fund their growth. And so one of the things that we actually had to do is we went in and took a look at the business at the SKU level and figured out, helped them make better decisions on selling SKUs that gave them a better gross margin. But then also did a very simple, honestly, mathematical calculation to try to understand how long money is held with different SKU categories. So for instance, if you're selling a pencil and product number 1 and you're selling an eraser, you may make triple the gross margin on a pencil versus an eraser. But if the pencil takes 100 days to convert from raw material to finished product and then to sell it to your customer and then turn it back in cash, that might be an issue where if the eraser only takes 10 days. So you need to look at all your product lines and understand how quickly you can turn things into cash, because that will very soon become the limiting factor to growing your business, to doing business, and things will come to a standstill. So that's an example of, honestly, a company that's growing, that's doing really well, right? But even they are impacted with this pandemic from a financial liquidity standpoint.
Great, thanks, Yohaan. I'd like to open up the floor for Q&A. If there's any participants on the call that would like to ask a question of any of the speakers, please feel free. We'll get Robin to open up the mics of the participants. If you just speak into your computer, that would be great. We'll try and help you out. Are they open, Robin?
Yeah, alternatively, if people would prefer, you can type your question into the chat box there, and that will feed through to us as well.
Okay. Great. Racco, I just like to maybe if you could give an example as well on the business resilient, how you've been, give some examples of some of the stuff you've been working with clients through the last 8 or so months through the pandemic, and how you've been able to help them, keep pushing through, if you will.
Sure, absolutely. So it's kind of been interesting, and it's all really kind of been in stages. So as you can imagine, during March and April, it was very much that we, myself and my team had the opportunity to actually help our clients or help individuals with the actual response. not divulging anything, but we had, we already had some work that we were doing with a couple of financial institutions, a couple of municipalities, a couple of communities, and we were actually helping them to figure out what their response was going to be. Again, tons of uncertainty, not a lot of people knowing what was necessarily going on. So we were actually on the ground kind of helping people and helping to set up those structures to make sure that they were flowing through and doing things. After we kind of went through that stabilization period, if I can kind of term it that, throughout the summer, what we noted was we were doing a lot with organizations to kind of figure out how to make sure that people were still able to do their work from home. And that involved a lot of different things. So it might have actually been helping people to make sure that they had a plan, again, whether they were working from home or had to do some type of hybrid approach where, some people were coming into the factory or whatnot to do their work. But it was also making sure that we understood what the potential risk exposures were going to be, right? As soon as we changed our working environment, we changed our control environment. So understanding what we needed to do to make sure that we were still able to kind of think about things from cyber exposure, health and safety exposure, privacy exposure, all those different types of things. So that was quite a bit of the work that we ended up doing in the summer. And then I'll be frank, and this is why when I kind of was speaking a little bit earlier too about one of the things that I recommend to everybody, what we ended up doing quite a bit in August and September was helping people to do not necessarily post-COVID because we're still in it, but a quick COVID response review to understanding that the second wave is coming. What do we need to keep doing, start doing, stop doing for these future onsets? So that's been quite a bit of what we've been looking at over the last 8 months.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Phil. I would just say, through my experience over the last 8 months with clients, the biggest thing I'm finding is just communication is such a key thing with our clients, and I'm spending a lot more time having just dialogue with the clients, picking up the phone. Sometimes I have no agenda when I do reach out to a client. It's just picking up the phone and sort of they need someone to talk to, and before you know it, an hour or so has passed and we've had a great conversation. They've updated me on where things are at, where the opportunities are, what some of their struggles are. So that's been a huge thing I would say over the last 8 months for me, is just having dialogue with clients has been so key. They really appreciate that. And because a lot of the planning that we've put in place in the past is that ultimately it's built a lot of business resilience for the clients to manage through this pandemic. And luckily, touch wood, I've had no clients that have had to be calling up our corporate recovery and bankruptcy folks because there certainly is some people that's the only option at this point in time. But I think in summary, I would say is just surround yourself with a great team of advisors. Don't hesitate to reach out to them. Have those advisors talk to each other is a key thing as well. So everyone is singing from the same song sheet, as they say, is another key thing. And don't be afraid to ask for help, because no one has gone through a pandemic like this before, and we're all sort of figuring it out as we go. And I think that's a key thing. And business owners who have built their business up for many years, pull on that those struggles that you had when you started your business up. Those are key things and lessons you learned many years ago when you started, and those are going to come back today to help you through what we're being faced with. So I thank everyone for joining. Sorry about the technical glitches at the beginning, but by all means, if you have any further questions, you can enter them in the Q&A. But if not, we appreciate everyone participating today, and hope you have a great day. Thank you.